Hello, my name is Bob Heilbrunner, and this is a video of a talk I gave to my class, which is given at the local extension service of the local university. The class is called um, Support for Living a Meaningful Life in Dark Times, and is a response to the MAGA experience and the looming threat of, well, the beginnings of fascism that we face today. Um, the class has also in the past been called and is sort of subtitled Belonging to Ourselves, Each Other, and the Planet. So this is the video of the talk I gave to the second class, and it's here to share with anybody that's interested, but also for class members to review or or for those who missed the class. Okay, here goes. This class hopes to offer, one, an orienting framework, a sort of you are here map, a community of support, and experiential practices to help us live authentic, engaged, meaningful, grateful lives in hard times, and to find our place in the healing transformation that nature is asking our species and our present human culture to make. The orienting to review from the first class, the orienting framework that this course offers is that our MAGA experience is not just the creation of one deeply damaged human being or his followers, or even the tiny corporate elite that uses Trump to expand its economic power to historically unprecedented levels and uses Trump to advance its agenda, but the result of an underlying cultural paradigm that I will call the narcissistic or exceptionalist paradigm that affects the way we view and live our lives and how we act in the world at every level, from the most personal to the political to the ecological to the spiritual. The course is organized around recognizing the effects of the narcissistic paradigm we live in each of the realm of our lives, and thus supporting each other to resist and transform the narcissistic paradigm at every level of our lives, to build a new way of living together on the planet, a new way which is also in part an ancient way, because some of the ills in how we're living on the planet are newfangled, given the fact that 99% of our history was lived as hunter-gatherers. Not to idealize that, but just to say that there's things they understood that we have forgotten. But anyway, to support each other, to resist and transform the narcissistic paradigm at every level of our lives, and to build a new way of living together on the planet, which is also an ancient way that I'm calling the paradigm of communion or belonging, a way which recognizes the complex interdependencies that create the tapestry of life upon which all life depends, and to find our proper place within that tapestry. To find our true belonging, and belonging I will continue to define in the course of this class as being both fully yourself. It's not sacrificing, it's taking care of, defending, and expressing and being yourself at every level, and being respectful of and aware of your dependency on the rest of creation and your need to find a respect or a place in that respects the place of everything else. Now, like any overarching intellectual framework, this way of trying to understand what's going on is, of course, a great generalization, and not least because it leaves out the countercultural trends and values that have been gradually growing in response to the failings and blind spots and failed promises of the existing paradigm. From the anti-patriarchal, anti-racist, anti-imperialist, anti-war, anti-sexist, and ecological movements that have arisen in opposition to the dominant paradigm, and that hope to offer a healing of its wounds. But the unifying notion of this way of looking at it, that's of looking at the principles of the dominant paradigm. Excuse me, I'm going to stop because my phone's ringing. I think where I stopped when the phone rang was that the unifying notion of the way of looking at the paradigms that I'm offering, the unifying notion is that that way of looking at it, the narcissistic paradigm's way of looking at it, makes the same mistake at every level of our lives. And we can call that the great mistake. And I call it the great mistake after a poem by David White called Everything is Waiting for You. So this is a poem by David White, W-H-Y-T-E, called Everything is Waiting for You. He says, "Your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone." That's the great mistake. Your great mistake. And I picture him speaking to himself in the mirror, looking in the mirror and talking to himself. Your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone. As if life were a progressive and cunning crime with no witnesses to the tiny hidden transgressions. To feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. To feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely even you at times have felt the grand array, the swelling presence and the chorus grounding and the chorus crowding out your solo voice. You must note the way the soap dish enables you, or the window latch grants you freedom. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. The stairs are your mentor of things to come. The doors have always been there to frighten you and invite you. And the tiny speaker in the phone is your dream ladder to divinity. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. Put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. The kettle is singing even as it pours you a drink. The cooking pots have left their arrogant aloofness and seen the good in you at last. All the birds and creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you. And the lines there that I've underlined for myself are, your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone. That's the great mistake of us as individuals, as a species, as a culture, as a race, at every level. That's the great mistake. And then to feel abandoned is to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely even you have have felt the grand array, the swelling presence and the chorus crowding out your solo voice. And then alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. So to become aware, to be alert, to be present to the world. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. And then put down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. All the birds and creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you. So to reiterate, the great mistake is to think we are separate from the rest of creation and thus alone. And the cure is to be present to the chorus. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. Now, another way of identifying the great mistake is from a Native American elder, and I heard him interviewed, and I don't have access to that video anymore, and I don't remember his name. But I do very much remember what he said. And what's happening is there's an interview. Native American elder is being interviewed, and he's a little impatient because he doesn't really feel like the interviewer is getting it. And finally, he kind of loses patience and he says, look, the difference is we belong to the garden and you were expelled from it. We belong to the garden and you were expelled from it. And that gave me cold stuff down my back when I heard him say that. So the Native American view is all our relations, is summarized in all our relations, meaning that we are part of and that everything in the world, from other animals to other species, to the plants, to the earth, to the ground, to the rocks, to the canyons, to the rivers, to the mountains, everything is our relationship, our relatives of us. Now, it's interesting because our meaning of the founding myth of our current civilization of Christianity and I guess of Judaism too, for our biblical founding story, myth is that our founding cultural myth is that we were expelled from the garden. And if you say that a myth is something, not something that you necessarily have to literally believe as a fact, that a myth is, as in the Joseph Campbell's idea, a myth is not a literal truth. A myth is something that has been passed on from generation to generation, a story that's been passed on from generation to generation because it resonates. It resonates with some important truth of our experience. That's why it's been kept alive. If you look at it that way, then the story of the expulsion from Eden touches on our grief at the loss of our initial primal unity with the rest of nature, our innocent animal membership in the whole. And in that myth, the cause of that loss is identified as attaining a kind of knowledge that only God can handle. And this is in a culture where we project our separateness onto God. So where God is outside of nature, God is not immanent in nature. God doesn't work through nature. Nature isn't sacred. God is a force outside of nature that rules over it, that created it, that makes the rules, that judges it, that guides it. So that nature, that what got us expelled is trying to be like God, which is to say, trying to, which only God can handle, apparently, seeing ourselves as separate from and above and out of and in charge of and whatever. So we got thrown out because we attained or tried to attain and attain when we tasted the apple of knowledge that only God can handle. We were expelled from the garden and from our innocent immersion in life and our innocent and spontaneous participation in life by having and seeking a kind of knowledge that separates us, that excludes us and separates us from the rest of life, that puts us outside and above it in a certain sense. Seen in this light, the expulsion is a cautionary tale about the human vulnerability and susceptibility for hubris, for being too big for our britches. And it's also the story of our primal hunger to regain some sense of belonging, of spiritual belonging. The danger of the human susceptibility to experience ourselves as separate from and apart from the rest of life, and worse, above the rest of life, is testified to by the near universal persistence of cautionary tales, from the adventures of Coyote to Pandora's box, to the flight of Icarus, to Mickey Mouse in The Sorcerer's Apprentice, of cautionary tales that warn us of the danger of hubris, of our species' proclivity for hubris. And the fact that our human belonging is not automatic, is not simply spontaneous and automatic, but needs cultivation, is attested to by the long history of rites and rituals and rites of passage and sacred stories and rituals developed by indigenous cultures to put their members in alignment with the cycles and rhythms and requirements of nature, to put us in alignment with what nature requires of us, what's required to live and be part of nature, to heal the human susceptibility to separateness and reclaim the human belonging to the whole. And that includes rituals that are about the cycles of life, the timing, the cycles of life, birth, growth, death. And now there is no going back to our primal animal innocence for our species, but there are psychological, spiritual, and intellectual ways to heal the divide. Just as the narcissistic paradigm privileges and celebrates and reinforces the attributes that set us apart from the rest of life, and thus justifies our exploitation and domination over the rest of life, the healing of our separation requires us to rediscover our membership, interdependence, and communion with all our relations. Now, in this class, we'll be looking at this in various realms of human thought and behavior. But for today, we can put an idea of what's required in this process, a preliminary idea, if we look at how the great mistake plays out in our views. We'll look at both of these in more detail, but a preliminary look at how the great mistake plays out in our view of evolution and the evolution of the human brain. So instead of an evolutionary process that celebrates competition and survival among competing species as the organizing principle of evolution, it's part of the evolutionary process, but as it's privileging that as the central motor of evolution, instead of doing that, and thereby seeing the evolutionary victory, seeing that celebrating the evolutionary victory represented by the domination of the human species in the battle for survival of the fittest, right? Survival of the fittest. Instead of that, we can recognize also that everything that has survived has done so by finding a niche, a place in the complex web of mutual dependencies that co-create the web of life upon which all life depends. Those creatures that have not found a niche, that have not found a way to weave themselves into the way of life, into the web of life, to contribute to it and receive from it, to be sustained from it and be part of it. Those that do not have fallen through the evolutionary process and don't exist anymore. So that ability to be part of is as important as the ability to assert and exist one's own existence, and is part of the complexity of what it means to belong as part of the world. So as opposed to the idea of, or in conjunction, or paired up with the idea of survival of the fittest, when fittest is primitively defined as the meanest, baddest, toughest, you could say that's balanced by the survival of that which fits in. That an equally important principle of evolution is the survival of that which fits in. Now, if we look at the evolution of the human brain, we can say what sets us apart is the sort of plan-making, calculating, goal-setting executive function of the brain, which is the cerebral cortex and the central cerebral cortex. But that's also the newest and youngest and least evolutionary tested aspect of the human functioning, of the functioning of the human brain. But that calculating, plan making, goal setting, executive function, that aspect of that part of the human brain is the unique gift and curse of our species. And of course, just like individuals, our strengths and our weaknesses, our powers and our blind spots and possible destruction are closely related. Now, the narcissistic paradigm encourages us to celebrate what separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom, of the animal world, which separates us from the rest of creation, and therefore celebrates sort of our newfangled toy, our special newfangled toy that makes us separate, but therefore also in our hierarchical view, in the narcissistic paradigm's hierarchical view, makes us above and better than. So we can use our detached, calculating, goal-setting ability to rule over the older, this is now the internal workings of our brain. We can use the detached, calculating, goal-setting ability to rule over our older, ancient, emotional, instinctual selves by celebrating our new toy and wanting it to rule internally. But detached from the guidance of our heart and our evolved bodily instincts, our unbridled executive function is capable of great cruelty. That's explored, among other things, by Hannah Arendt in her book called Eichmann in Jerusalem, where she says, and it's called The Banality of Evil, the banality of evil, meaning that she says Eichmann didn't hate Jews. He just did what he was told. He just was given an order from the Führer, and then his job was simply to implement that order with his best detached planning skills. So that's an example of whether you put that functional ability in the what's it in service of? And if it's in service of evil, then it's in service of evil. And if you don't allow it, that calculating part of the human brain to be in service of the heart and the spirit and the soul, um, it's capable of untold horror. So it's essentially a sociopath. Sociopath is someone whose intellectual ability is not tethered to conscience or emotion or feelings. So to heal that danger, we have to reconnect our executive function to be in service of, to be on the model of a servant leader rather than a dictator, to be in service of our heart and our evolved mammalian instincts for attachment, love, community, and connection that evolution has gifted us, has bequeathed us, that have been tested in the evolutionary process, and they're part of what evolution has bequeathed us. And it's sort of like a rider and a horse. Uh, a really good rider doesn't just make the horse do whatever he or she wants. The good rider listens to the horse and knows that the horse knows things and senses things and hears things and smells things that it doesn't. And if the horse gets startled or doesn't want to go someplace, it takes that into account. It doesn't just spur it on to do what the human rider wants. I mentioned this once in a previous class. Hold on a minute because my dog is making a bunch of noise. Come here. I'm going to introduce my dog here. I'm going to introduce my dog here. This is my dog called Wonder. He's a beautiful creature. And he's a little upset right now because his mom, my wife, is out on the property doing other stuff and he's missing her. Anyway, so I mentioned this idea of the rider and the horse in a previous class. And one of the people in the class said, I do equestrian healing with equestrian work with kids who are suffering PTSD. And what we tell them is ultimately what you want to do is to become a centaur. So where the rider and the horse become one, which an analogy would mean that the instinctual heritage for communion and connection and the heart and the emotional self and the calculating brain would become one, would work in unity. And again, to repeat, to find our true belonging means to celebrate both our unique gifts our, our unique gifts and how to secure our place in the world and be ourselves and fully um, live out our potentialities as individuals and as a species and as a culture. And our need for community and connection within the whole. And creatively negotiating that creatively negotiating those two, to be oneself and to be connected, is to create is what it takes to belong. And that's true both in our most intimate relationships, but also in our relationship to other cultures, other species, other races, the environment in general, and to however we think of spirit. So that's the challenge. Everything on earth is required to face that challenge and to negotiate that challenge, being self and being in connection. And that's the end of the talk that I gave to the class. And after that, the second part of the class was a discussion. And we talked about what it takes to have a safe discussion. And among the things it takes is one, confidentiality, that you know that what's shared in the group is not going to be shared outside of the group in a way that's identified with individuals in the group. And the basic understanding that we all contain, to listen with the understanding that we all contain multitudes, and that gives us the freedom to understand, to come as we are, and to be authentic, and to allow ourselves to be seen in our authentic selves. But what it takes, the safety for that is that everyone in the group understands that because someone is afraid, talking about their fear, it doesn't mean they're a fearful person. If someone is talking about sharing their anger, it doesn't mean they're an angry person. If someone is talking about their despair, it doesn't mean they're a despairing or hopeless person. If someone is talking confidently and strongly, it doesn't mean they're a confident and strong person, because we all contain all of those, and whatever we're feeling in the moment will shift and change and doesn't define the person that we are, but is simply a feeling that we are hosting. So in that, with that as the sort of ground rules, the questions that I offered the class to talk about is, can you share and what's your experience of being alone and of being separate? An experience of being alone and of being separate. And your experience of belonging and being part of. Being alone and separate, and your experience of being part of. And your resilience in the transition between those. How you learn to handle that dichotomy. And what helps you to feel that you belong in life right now, at this stage of your life. What have you learned? Or what are the tools you've developed that help you experience your belonging in life right now? And then we moved on to the third aspect of the class, which is experiential support, proposing methods to experientially access your belonging to the life force as it expresses itself in you. And for that, I'm going to grab a poem by Mary Oliver, because what I want to support is quick and dirty access to your relationship to source, to your relationship to life as it is expressed in and through you, to you, as it's incarnate in you. And that's partly because I'm an impatient guy, and I think a lot of people in the class have very developed spiritual and meditative processes, but I'm a kind of impatient guy, and it's hard for me to sit still. And so I found ways that work for me. But it's important to me to feel that a sense of belonging and being part of spirit, or whatever you want to call that, being part of the whole, being connected with the whole, having a place in the whole, that is always there, and that there's only a fine gauze that separates me from it when I'm focused on on the have-tos of my life, and that it takes just a little twist to get there. And that like a favorite spot in the woods, the more and the more easily and more often you go there, the clearer the trail there is, and the easier, the more comfortable it is, and the easier it is to access that. So, therefore, this poem, Mary Oliver, it's called Wild Geese. It's pretty well known. I'm sure most of you know it. And I'm going to put my glasses on because this is a little small here. You do not have to be good. It's called wild geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over prairies and deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to you, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over announcing your place in the family of things. I'm going to read it again. But the part that the why I'm reading it is the thing about you don't have to walk on your knees 100 miles from Kempton to experience this. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese high in the clean blue air are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to you, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place, family of. So direct access is the antidote to the forces of religious doctrines and institutions and political powers that want to be our middleman to a feeling of spirituality and belonging, and thus to control us, to control our access to spirit. And that brings to my mind, the idea of what we can rest in, because the ongoing in the discussion questions, the ongoing feeling that kept coming up was, it's not enough. I can't do enough. Considering the horror of the threat to the world that's happening, I can't muster enough. Whatever I can muster is not enough. It's not enough to be appropriate to the horror of the threat, of the danger to the existence of the world. And so what can we rest in? What's the mature version of when I was a young activist, the whole thing was struggle. We have to gather ourselves to struggle. And so what's the older, mature version where we can rest in? We can be effectively engaged, but also at peace and acceptance and appreciation of life. So what can we rest in? And what I've come up with is that we, the human species, will not save or ruin the world. We will not save or ruin the world. We did not invent the human experiment. Nature did. And nature will go on with or without us. Nature will go on with or without us. Our job is to be the best version of the human experiment we can. And nature will either use us and recruit us with all our gifts and imperfections, with all our gifts and liabilities. Nature will use us and recruit us as part of its healing process, or go on to the next thing without us. So what we can rest on is that we are expressions and incarnations of the life spirit, of life, of the life process. And so the point of this meditation I'm about to offer is to access this, to be fueled by it and access it. So what we did then was we turned the lights down and we did a meditation. I'm going to do a version of it right now. So get comfortable. Feel the weight of your body in your seat. Take a breath, take a couple of breaths, and notice that your weight settles into exactly where you are as you exhale. Close your eyes and sense into your experience of your body. Notice every sensation, every sensation you feel and experience in your body that tells you without any doubt and without any need for external confirmation that you are a living organism, a living being, and not a marble statue of yourself. What you experience may be a subtle trickle, like a little spring in the desert or a little sprout in the desert that takes your exquisite attention to notice and tend. It may be an extreme storm sweeping through your whole body and every corner of your body. It may be a discomfort or a pain. It may be a sense of warmth. It may be a sense of rhythm or pulsation or exchange that's part of all the communications and exchanges that life is performing in your body as you sit here. Nature is in us as it is outside us. There is a campfire in the mitochondria of every one of our cells in our body. There are rivers of blood that reach and feed and sustain every campfire in every cell of our body that removes the waste and what needs to be removed. There's an infinitely fine fibrous network of nerves that reach every corner of our body into every cell in the body. There are storms that blow through our body, that wash through our body. And at all times, there is the ongoing beat of our heart, like a drum in the forest, that has been going from before we came out into the air and will go into the last moments of our existence and our present. This is your connection to the source which sustains you and expresses itself in you. This is what you're experiencing is how the source of life is expressed in you, is incarnated in you, and sustains you, and is the ground of your being that is always, always, always there for you, should you develop the habit and skills of accessing it. And this is your direct connection to the source of your life that cannot be controlled or manipulated by any source that attempts to be a middleman and thus to control your access to your spirit. Just stay with whatever you're experiencing. And slowly make yourself familiar with it so you can come back here as often as you want and need. Come back to this experience of being connected. And when you're ready, only when you're ready, at your own pace, slowly open your eyes with soft focus and gradually come back into the room and notice this wonderful group of distinguished, heartfelt, and life experienced people with whom you are sharing this room. And I think that's the end of what I want to record right now. See you next time.